Good morning and welcome to the seminar today. Also to the people who is watching the seminar in YouTube. Today we will have the seminar Become a Published Researcher, which I think that it's interesting for those of you who are starting your scientific career and you have to write a paper for the first time, but also for those who wants to improve the quality of their paper, so to improve or to get more chances to have the paper published in a good journal. For this, we have Pablo Secades with us. So before starting the seminar, I will say a few words about him. He is a molecular and cell biology PhD with a long lab experience where he has worked for over 17 years. Initially as a microbiologist in Spain and eventually as a cell and molecular biologist in the Netherlands. He has worked as a managing editor for the journal Vaccine at Elsevier for 1 year and as a scientific publisher in oceanography, handling 16 journals on this topic for 1 more year, also at Elsevier. And he is currently working as a customer consultant for core solutions at Elsevier. So we thank you very much for coming here to give this talk. And now you can start.
Thank you very much, Esther, for your presentation. Thank you very much, Jose Miguel, for your invitation. It's very nice to be here in this place, which is a very beautiful combination of the most advanced science, I think, in Spain with some historical background. It's really fantastic to be here. So I hope to provide a message that is useful for you when writing your articles. I always like to start breaking the ice a little bit, giving you some sort of an introduction on scholarly publishing. We are going to talk about peer review. We are going to give some tips and tricks on how to properly present an article in such a way that your chances to get it accepted are higher. So let's talk a little bit about scientific publishing. It all started from this slide. I will only highlight two main things. First of it is when was the first journal with a peer review process in place launched. This happened back in the year 1665. It's almost 400 years. The kind of peer review system they had in place is very similar to what we have today. And this, in my opinion, shows that the system is correct. Nothing has dramatically changed all through 400 years. So the peer review system is solid and robust. And I think this is really important for science. I think that this is the way science works and evolves. Another thing that I would like to highlight is this moment here. 1990, 1 year before internet was launched. And in 1990, 1 year later, the first journal fully online was launched. This journal was Postmodern Culture, and actually it opened the door for the future, the rest of the journals. Most of the journals are today online, and it's not only the journals, so getting access to the content, but also the way we process the journals, the way we handle the peer review system. Everything is done online. I remember back in the days, 22 years ago, when I started doing research, when you finish your article, you will print 5 copies, put them in 5 different envelopes, send them by a post to the editorial office, and from there onwards. And it was taking for ages. Nowadays, we still think that the peer review process is slow, but it was far more inefficient 20 years ago. So, well, this is a little bit the highlight. I could go through the slide with more detail, but for the sake of time, I won't do it. In relation with my last point, this is just to want to show you that, look at this. So we started. Can you hear me now? Well, this timeline starts in 1580 and ends in 2010. And if you look at it, most of the time is covered by recent years. Actually, again, from this point, 1989, where internet was launched. So in the uppermost part has to do with publishing in Elsevier, and you can see that everything happened in the last 30, 40 years. So internet really dramatically changed the landscape of research, scientific communication, and publishing in general. So this is something that is very relevant, and especially, again, everything is done now in internet. All editorial systems are based on the web. And this is very nice because everything stays recorded, all the comments from the reviewers, all the comments from the authors, and all the communication involved in the publishing process. This is also to show you how important scientific publishing is nowadays. As you can see here, only STM publishers, so Science, Technology, and Medicine, publish more than 2 million peer-reviewed articles per year, which is a very impressive amount of articles. And this is complemented by the fact that 80 to 90% of scientists that have ever existed are still alive. So you can imagine the amount of scientific production that we are having. Yes, sorry. Can you hear? Hola, hello. Otherwise, I can take the other microphone if you prefer. Sorry. Problems of direct, literally translated from Spanish. Yes, sure. Can you hear me? Can you properly hear me? Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, very original. Es difícil de... Yo puedo utilizar el otro sin problema, ¿eh? No, cuando se me duerman las manos ya... Hello, 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 hello. Okay. So, that, please let me know if you cannot hear me properly, those of you that are online. So I was saying that the amount of scientific output nowadays is really impressive. And of course, this is very nice because everything to science is more than welcome. But on the other hand, it's very difficult to find what you are actually looking for because you really need to narrow down all these papers to what it is of your interest. So very good news, but some problems involved, of course. Well, why are you here now, today? Well, most probably all of you will want at a certain point to have a paper published. So this is the goal. I was here one day, and actually I was having this feeling, and this straight line was not actually that straight. There were some turns all around. And there's all these people, editors, reviewers, sometimes your own supervisors, and this was the picture or the image I have from them. These people, they want to ruin my life. They are very critical to my work. They think that what I'm doing is not that good, and they are always, you know, making my life very difficult in order for get my papers accepted. But actually, the idea of this webinar is just to remove this from your mind. These people are actually people, researchers, as you are, scientists, that they just want to have the best science published. So they will be critical to your work, but not because they want to ruin your lives, but just because they want you to provide the best science you can. So hopefully at the end of this webinar, you will have the impression that these people are actually here to help and not to put obstacles in your way. So we will be talking about the peer review process, just some lines on it, how to prepare your manuscript for initial submission, and unfortunately, 1 out of 200 or 300 articles are accepted at the first trial. So most probably you will have to resubmit at a certain point, either to the same journal where you have submitted the first time or to a different journal. So be prepared for that because this is important. So this is the peer review process. It looks a little bit tricky, but it's very simple. As an author, you have been working in the lab hardly, and then you have compiled all your data in an article. Then you will choose a proper journal that can accommodate your article, and you will send your research there. So you will be somewhere here. And here is where I will be giving tips and tricks. The editor will receive the article, and the first thing that he will check, or she will check, is that it meets all the requirements for the journal. And it's here where it is important to be focused. And I cannot say anything about the science you are doing. This is your topic, and I'm sure that you are doing the best you can. But sometimes when writing, you really need to pay attention to small details that will make happy to the editors. So I hope that what I will say will be helpful to you, covering the requirements needed for the journal. If these requirements are not fulfilled, your article will be immediately rejected. It won't go to reviewers. But if it is properly presented and the content is good and it fits the journal, it will be sent to reviewers. Reviewers will check it, will give a recommendation, it will come back to the editor, and he or she will decide to reject it, to accept it, or in most of the cases, taking into account the comments from the reviewers, will make a decision. That can be a major revision or minor revision or so on. And then you will come here, is some sort of coming back to the start, but you are one step farther, so, and then it will all start over again. But I will come back to this later when we are thinking of resubmitting your articles. First of all, you need to select a journal for your article. As you have seen, there are more than 2,000 journals out there. So it's more than 20,000 journals out there. So it's not a trivial, it's not a trivial aspect of the research, choosing the right journal. Please be sure that the journal is properly peer-reviewed, because this will indicate that your science is robust and meaningful. You need to check for the audience. You need to know who you want to convey your message to. Depending on where are you in your career, you might want to think on how fast they take decisions. If you have asked for funding for a grant or whatever, you might need to have articles. So this is something to take into account. It's not only about impact factor, but it's also about some strategic thinking as well. And of course, now there is a policy on open access that is very important, so you really need to know whether you need to publish in open access or not. And related to open access, in the last years, new players have come into the equation, and these are the predatory journals. These are journals that won't peer review your paper properly. They will charge money for it, and most probably your articles will end nowhere. And as an example, and this is a real example, I got an email 2 weeks ago, which was very fortunate because then I can show it to you. I received this email proposing me to send an article. In my scientific career, I was never proposed to send an article. I had to do it myself, as most of you will. So it was surprising to me to get this. And as you can see here, it started flattering me a bit. So, you know, you are an eminent scientist, which is not the case. My impact factor is 16, so I mean, it's far away from this. And my recent scientific communication here. So my last paper is 2019 in science, in biomedicine. This is really, you know, the Middle Ages, so nothing new. Furthermore, they advised me to send my article by an email with an attachment. This won't happen. Again, editorial systems are in place. They belong to the journals, and everything needs to be done within those systems. Articles are not sent via email anymore. And last but not least, editors are proud of being editors. They will sign their letters. So this happens. And if you send your articles to these journals, they will be accepted easily. You will be charged. They will be published. They won't ever have an impact factor, and you will never get cited. And of course, this is what your career will be based on: citations, publications, and so on. So please pay attention to this, because it's really important, and it's making a lot of noise in the publishing world. Okay, you need to choose the right journals. In the web pages of the journals, you have all the information that you need as to tackle if this is the right journal for your research or not. In the section Aims and Scope, there is a description of the disciplines that these journals will accommodate. Please pay attention to this, because there's a lot of disciplines, and not all the journals are equally happy to have some non-related content. So you really need to focus on the aims and scope of the journal. And you really need also to check the types of articles that are published. Maybe you want to publish a normal article research, but maybe you want to publish a methodological article, a review article, short communication. So all this is indicated in the guide of for authors in the journals, and you really need to know which kind of format you want to choose. And again, article types are indicated in the guide for authors, and it's also advisable before you submit to a specific journal to read some articles on that journal in order to get acquainted with the kind of structure they have and the style they are asking for and so on. So basically this is a little bit. And if you still are not sure which journal would be the best for your research, there are tools in the internet. We offer what we call Journal Finder. Here you will paste your abstract, your title, your keywords, and you will get a list. In this case, only Elsevier journals, but I think that other publishers, they have also similar tools, and you will get a list of potential journals for your research. I think this is a very interesting tool. So you also need to identify properly your audience. Different people expect to receive a message in a different way, so please keep your audience in mind. This is important when conveying your message. And it's always important or interesting to talk to your colleagues, to your peers, to your supervisors, to your librarians, in order to help you to select the best journal and the audience that is connected to this journal. And hopefully all these great people will become a little bit more colorful in such a way that you can properly deliver the message that you want. So you have a list of journals. This needs to be agreed by all the authors in your publication, all your collaborators. And now that I'm talking about authors, I will give some sort of a small pill on ethics. I'm not sure if you know about the figure of the ghost and the guest author. The ghost author is that author that has closely collaborated with you, and then after some time, because of whatever reason, normally because personal reasons, you decide to remove him from the list. You shouldn't do that. On the other hand, a guest author is that renowned person in your field that you added to the article, to the list of authors, because you think that the editor will get a nice impression of having this person listed in your list of authors. Don't do that. This is not ethical. And if you see someone doing it, advise him or her not to do it, because people will know. Communities are small, and these people will eventually find this article. And some of them will say, hey, why I'm not included? And the guest author will say, hey, why I am included? They will write to the journal, and your article will stay on hold until you solve this problem. So pay attention to this as well, because it sounds crazy, but it happens often. So keep it in mind, please. And then, since the beginning of your research, keep the article in your mind and write it. Always don't do sketches. Don't think, okay, I can be not that formal because, this is the first sketch, the first draft. Take it seriously and write it from the beginning as it is going to be the final version. This will help you to have it properly done. And something that is not allowed either is to submit the same article to two journals at the same time. So you can send the article to one journal, and when it is rejected, if this is the case, you can send it to another journal. You also have the right to withdraw it from the journal, so if it is taking a long time to get it reviewed, you can always write to the journal and say, I don't want to have it with your journal anymore, I'm going to submit it somewhere else. But don't submit your articles to two different journals at the same time, because people will notice. Editors, in most of the cases, are also reviewers and work for more than one journal. So it's not the first time that the same editor is getting the same paper for two different journals. In some cases, you will get a veto for that journal from 6 months to 2 years, and this has an impact, of course, so pay attention to this as well. And if I want a message to be clear, is that please always refer to the guide for authors. It's very important. Everything is there. All the information you need to properly write an article is there. And the editors really like to have their guides for author updated, and they ask authors to really stick to them. And it's not trivial. I will come back to this over and over and over again, because it's very important to read properly and fully the guide for authors and stick to the rules. It's very clear. It's very easy to find it in all the journals online. Common problems with submissions, and these are comments from the editors. So the content is out of scope. We have mentioned this before. People didn't read the guide for authors. We have mentioned this before. Well, there are no reviewers suggested. If it was asked for it, well, what you can see there. Basically, these are all formal aspects that can be easily let's say, addressed. So why not to do it properly when you can? if you don't pay attention to these small details, even if you have the best science ever, your article won't be accepted. It will be rejected when the editor receives it. So pay attention to this, because this talk is about it. So it's about the formal aspects and about writing properly and with the right structure in mind. So why to publish and what to publish? So you will all have your personal reasons. Maybe you want a PhD, you want a promotion, you want your mom to be proud of you, whatever. But to be honest, editors, reviewers, the scientific community do not care about it. They want clear messages, proper scientific messages. So focus on your science, not on your personal reasons, or at least fake it until you make it. But the importance here is to convey good science. It's not about your personal reasons. So the scientific message is what matters, is the content. You need to answer a couple of questions before you consider to be ready to publish. So you have to provide something new, because outdated work won't be really taken into account by the scientific community. Hot topics, of course, the hotter the topic, the higher the chances you have to get it accepted. Not all of us have been working in the most advanced last-minute science, but it is important to follow a little bit the trends, especially when getting funding as well. So this is also important. And of course, you need to provide solutions or answers to important scientific questions. So if your answer to this is yes, you can remove the question, and then you are ready to submit. So basically, this is what I show here. Please always show original results, also original methods, new methodology, science that enhances the published work, previously published works, or that support previously published work. Don't use incorrect conclusions, and you can also write review articles with taking into consideration the latest publications on the specific topic. So with all this in mind, you are ready to publish. If you are on the left side of the balance, then you are not ready to publish, definitely. So well, you are all mindful of this, I'm pretty sure. So basically what you need is a strong and effective manuscript to present your contributions to the scientific community. But what does it make a manuscript strong and effective? Well, it needs to have good content. It needs to be presented in a clearly and logical manner. And of course, well, it needs to get to the audience without too much room for interpretation. Be very clear with your message. Don't let the others guess what you are trying to say. Be very direct and send the clear message you want to send. Don't put a lot of noise around it, because it will make the life of the editors and the reviewers more difficult, and then they won't approach the article with pleasure, let's say, or looking forward to it. And again, significance must be easy to wrap. No interpretation. My message is clear, is direct. I'm showing you what I want you to understand, and I don't want you to make interpretations out of it. So, because, yeah, this is it. As you, scientists are busy researchers, and they don't like wasting their times just guessing what others want to say. And again, please read the guide for authors. Language is a communication tool. It's a human communication tool. It's very important. We communicate with different people in different ways. It's not the same talking to your children than talking to your supervisor than talking to your family. And in science, it's the same. So once that you know your audience, you know how to properly accommodate your message in order to fulfill their expectations, let's say. This is a real editor complaint and has to do with what I have been saying. So basically, this editor is saying that he refuses to spend time trying to understand. Trying to understand. It's not understanding, it's trying to understand, meaning that, again, interpretation is involved, and we don't want them to interpret. We just want them to understand clearly our message. And something important here is, as a rule of thumb, if there are more than 6 grammatical errors in the abstract, he won't move forward. And this is a pity, because grammatical errors are easily avoidable. So you have a barrier here that is very easy to just jump through it without further problems. So pay attention to language, pay attention to the way you communicate, because it's really important. And you can get to this writing with clarity, objectivity, with accuracy, and being brief as possible. Also because there is limitation in terms of words in most of the journals. This you will have it in the guide for authors, definitely. The guide for authors, again and again. Really, this is the most important message of this presentation. Read the guide for authors. Sentences, again, no interpretation. Direct sentences, short sentences, one idea per sentence, as clear as possible for the editors to understand your message. And pay attention to punctuation, because sometimes we think that it's not that important, but there are instances when it is really important. It's not the same eating our grandfather that inviting our father to eat. So with this example, I just want to show you that it's really important to pay attention to punctuation, because it can really dramatically change the meaning of a specific message. And most of us, we need to write in English, because 99% of scientific publications have this language as a standard. It's not our mother language. We can some sort of handle it, but sometimes we struggle. So I would advise you not to use multiple statements, sentences combined with sentences with a lot of content involved, because it won't be clear. It's not our mother language, and we will make mistakes for sure, and these mistakes will bring to wrong interpretations and efforts from the editor. So keep it as short as possible, as direct as possible, one message per sentence. This is also a piece of advice that I think is important. Typical article structure. Well, as I'm showing here, different types of articles can have different layouts. I'm going to talk about the standard scientific article, and it's nice to be here because most of you will be basically holding to this structure. If you go to philosophy, to social sciences, there might be some other differences, but in this case, I think you will be confronting with this structure. Most of you will be confronting with this structure. So we have a head where you have the title, the abstract, and the keywords. And this part is very important because irrespective of you can access the whole content, the full content of the article, this will be available in all databases. So your title, your keywords, your abstract will always be findable by the community. So you have to put a lot of effort here because this is like the business card for your article. Everybody in the world will access this content. Then we have a body where introduction, methods, or material and methods, and results and discussions are covered. Here is where we present the core of our research, and then we will end up with conclusions, acknowledgements, references, and supplementary material. So this is basically the structure. We will be going through all these points in the next slides. Usually, we read the papers as follows. So first of all, we get the title and the abstract. If they are attractive, if they are catchy to us, we will continue. We will probably go through the conclusions, introduction, and from there onwards. When writing an article, I would advise you to use a different approach. Start in the other direction. Figures and tables are very easy to do because basically once that you have done an experiment, you can represent it in a figure or in a table. It's also very nice for your mind because starting to write the articles is like the painting, like the painter in front of the white canvas or the writer in front of the white paper. You don't know how to start, and sometimes it's difficult. You will start generating body of the body of the article by paying attention to figures and tables, and from there it's very easy to follow the methods. You know the methods better than anyone else. You have been doing those experiments, so it should be easy for you to write the methods. And then from the methods, results should flow, and then from there onwards. I would advise you to let title and abstract for the last moment, because again, it's really, really important to have them properly written. And you have a lot of space constraints here, so you cannot be as talkative or speakful as you would like to. So you really need to pay attention to the title and the abstract. Title for me is like poetry. I heard a poet once saying that for him poetry was conveying the biggest amount of content with the little amount of words. And basically, and the title of an article is the same. So you want basically to distill all the content of your paper in one single sentence. And this is not easy, and it is not trivial. So pay attention to the title. Well, you have some tips here. Of course, it needs to relate to the paper, to the content of the paper. It needs to be accurate, and it needs to be short. And if possible, it can be catchy because it will attract readers better. I will always remember this paper that I'm showing you here. I used to work with this transcription factor, and I read this paper, Baffled by Baphylomism. You know, the sound was so catchy, so powerful, and it was actually representing what I was looking for, that I thought this title is really fantastic. And since then onwards, I know how to find this paper always. I don't need to know the authors, I don't need to know the journal, I know the title, it sticks to my mind. So if you like to play, it is allowed, but be mindful when doing it. Share your titles with your colleagues, with your peers, because sometimes it's difficult to know whether the others are understanding what I want to say. But in my opinion, if you have a very catchy title, this will encourage the audience or your potential readers to continue reading the rest of the article. So our titles, in my opinion, are generally boring. Sometimes they need to be boring, that's it. But sometimes if you have room to play around a little bit, be playful and try to come up with a very nice and catchy title, sexy title. The audience will really appreciate it. Keywords. You will be asked to provide 5 or 7 keywords that will represent your work. Again, keywords are used to find articles, so it is important to come up with the right keywords. Sometimes we are tired, it's the end of our research, and well, let's think of 5 or 7 words, we put them there and that's it. They are important. They are not crucial, but they are really important. How to find good keywords? Well, you shouldn't look for keywords too general, because your article won't highlight from the rest, but you cannot choose very, very specific words, because no one will find it either. So as a tip, I would look for keywords in articles that might represent mine or the sources of my inspiration, what I use to write my introduction or my discussion or so on. Think of your own keywords, play around with them, put them in the databases, check what you find out, and consider if what the type of articles you are finding back would represent yours. And then this means that your keywords are some sort of correct and will guide your readers to your article, which will allow, again, to give you citations and so on. Abstract. The abstract is, again, very important. It's easily fundable. It's open to the whole community. Space is very limited there, around 250 words maximum. And there you really need to answer 2 questions. What you have been doing, and what are the results or the main findings that you are providing. So if you answer these 2 what in a proper manner, your abstract will be correct. And again, needs to be catchy, needs to be appealing for the audience to keep on reading your article. We are all very busy. We are not that focused lately with such a big amount of information all around us. So if your abstract is not really attractive, people won't read the rest of your article. So present it here as good as you can. Well, in the introduction, you will put your article in context. So you will say what others have been doing. You will talk about the problem that you want to answer, the questions you want to answer, the problem you want to solve, and you really need to put things in context. Is the right moment to cite the work of others? I would advise you to use always references from good journals, high standard, because the references you are using will some sort of show the kind of research you are doing. And as a piece of advice, I would also say that it's not bad to include references from the journal that you are submitting your article to, because it will give good impression. Of course, this needs to be fair, so fair references with good quality, but connected to the journal. I think this is nice for the editors when they see it. And well, in principle, you really need to go from the general to the specific point. In the introduction, of course, you are presenting the problem and you are presenting how you will address it, and you will be using methods for it. So basically, the methods should fit and flow from the introduction. So you will need to show that the methods that you have chosen are really correct and will really be the proper tools as to address those questions that you have presented in the introduction. Basically, material and methods, especially in our fields or in your fields, it is all about that anyone else, any other researchers anywhere in the world can replicate your results in a proper manner. And you have to be as accurate as possible. In general, editors are renowned scientists. They don't spend that much time in the lab, and they won't pay that much attention to material and methods, but reviewers, on the opposite, they will. They are researchers as you are, and they are working in your fields of expertise, and at a certain point, they will want to reproduce one or more of your experiments. So they will be paying a lot of attention to the material and methods. So keep it in mind. Results. Well, in the results sections, you will present your results. That's obvious. You spend long hours in the lab, weekends, and you really want to show how much work, how much effort you have put in your research. But unfortunately, you cannot show that. You need to show really what is relevant to the article. All these things here, you won't be able to really express it in the article. Actually, it will contribute to make noise and to get the message not that clear. So please only use for the results the main findings of your article where you want to make a point. There is a section, supplementary data, where you can add also some results that cannot be included in the main text. Now also in science, there is this movement towards open science and open data, so you can also upload data sets and whatever other data you might have to servers and make them available for the community. But for the article, you need to really show only the results that have an impact and are related to what you want to express. This is important. And well, be of course as thorough as you can, but again keep in mind that there is a space limitation also involved. And from results, or connected to results, you have the figures and the tables. Basically, you should be able to grasp the content of an article just by going through the figures and the tables. So keep this in mind. Design the figures and the tables, well, actually design the whole article in such a way that represents what you would like to read. So write the article that you would like to read. This is my piece of advice. Well, one picture is worth 1,000 words. In most of the cases, I would agree with this. So this is what your figures and tables will represent. Keep them as clean as possible and as clear as possible. Of course, use the proper labels, indexes, the proper scales, and so on. I like this example because it's in principle correct, but could be more clear. This could be a two-dimensional scatter plot with 3 lines, and it would be far easier to understand. So this is correct, but could be better. So my advice is that you keep your figures and your tables as simple and clear as possible. Sometimes we think that this is not really nice because, you know, it's simple. No, simplicity here is helpful, is good. Of course, if you are using pictures and so on, put the scales, use the proper language. Well, this is all about common sense. In the old times, printing in color was extremely expensive, so most of the scientists were publishing black and white. Nowadays, with the internet, everything is colorful, let's say. Well, this is very good to have access to color printed figures and tables, but keep in mind that, again, a lot of people are printing in their printers black and white, and that 10% of the population is color blinded. So this means that if you are using, for instance, red and green, they won't be able to differentiate. And again, if they have to put effort trying to understand the figure and the table, they will most probably give up and they won't continue reading. So if you want to use colors, of course, feel free to do it. It's more beautiful, definitely. But tag your series with different symbols. Use triangles or squares or circles or whatever, but make a distinction that is not only based on color. And if you have long boring tables, don't include them because they don't add anything to your article. You can always put them in the supplementary material or if the information is relevant. But again, we don't like to confront with all these huge tables and lists that actually they are not really saying anything about the real substantial content of your article. And then from there you get to the discussion. The discussion is actually the most important section of your article. Here you have the room to speculate, to think why your research is important, to let the community know what adds to the scientific area that you are working on. And well, you of course here needs to say or need to really put in place. If there are discrepancies with literature, this is the place to express it. So in most of the cases, we think, well, this result I got is a little bit contradictory with previous publications, and we want to hide it because we think that our chances to get it accepted will be less. If your experiments are robust and your results are clear, present even discrepancies with the community. It will be painful, and you will really have to show that what you are saying is true, but please be consistent with your results and honest to yourself. And this is the place to discuss about it in the discussion. So, well, it's interpretation of your results, consistency with all previously published work, and so on. So basically, there should be a flow from the introduction, presenting the article, presenting your research methods. You are using the proper methods to answer those questions. You present the results that you are getting, and then this is the chance to discuss those results. And from there, you get to the conclusions, where you can present both global and specific conclusions, and then you can indicate how you will continue working, because of course research is endless. You need to stop at a certain point to publish something, but there will be still more work to be done, and you might want to cover it here. Don't summarize the paper, because this is for the abstract, and don't judge the paper yourself. Others will do. It's not the place to say, hey, my work is fantastic, it's awesome, here I am. No, someone else will do it. In that sense, try to be cold, or at least not very enthusiastic, let's say. And the references, again, in the guide for authors, you will get all the information on how to present the references. The references are very, very important to the editors. Basically, they are working with references 24 hours a day. They like the references to be properly presented in terms of how they need to be written for the style, for the journal, but also the quality of your references. So don't use references that are poor in quality or in local languages, because again, they will represent the quality of your article. Having the references right is really important, especially for the editors. Again, there's more than 8,000 reference styles out there, and different journals will be requiring different references styles. And again, this is very, very, very important. And if my first or most important piece of advice is stick to the guide for authors, please, the second most important one is use reference managers. At Elsevier, we have Mendeley, but there's a lot of different reference managers. All of them are very good in quality and will be tremendously helpful to you. Writing references is a pain, because it's very difficult to write, because you have to really pay attention to detail, and it takes hours to write references. If you use reference managers, besides that you will be able to, with one click, give the style that you want to your references, you will also be able to have your library, to organize it, and to work with it in an easy way. So again, use reference managers. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, in most of the cases, you will need to submit to different journals, which means that you will need to change the style for all your references. If you have 150 references, for instance, it can take you 20 hours to change it manually. Whereas with a single click, you can reformat the style of a reference. So again, this is, in my opinion, very important. Please use reference managers. In 2 hours, you are more than familiar with them. It doesn't take long to get used to these tools. And then you have some sort of a bucket or a pot where you can drop things that are still very relevant to your article, but not the main findings or the main content that you would like to include. There you can drop figures, you can drop tables, audio, videos, any other content that you think or consider that might be helpful to understand your article. But what it is not as important as to be in the body of your article. So next to your article, you need to write a cover letter, and this is hello. I think. And this is the chance to talk to the editor of the journal. The editor of the journal is probably a renowned person in your field, someone that you follow, someone that you have been reading articles from. So is very nice. It's like talking to your rock star, let's say. So it's having the chance to directly address your article to them. So make them happy, let them know why their journal is important. They love their journals. They do this because they love science and they love the work they are doing. So use this as an opportunity to talk to them and to convince them that your research is fantastic and that the best place to accommodate your fantastic research is their fantastic journal. And again, it's not about flattering or saying how good you are, but it's also talking from a human perspective is good. And actually, if you're choosing that journal, you have reasons for that. So yeah, so this is your chance to talk to the editor, and you can follow these lines as to present the cover letter. First of all, the authors need to give final approval for the article. This you need to state it in this letter. You will need to explain why your research is important, and again, why this journal is the best fit for your research. And if in the guide for authors, you need to suggest reviewers, this is the place to do it, and this is also the place to express any conflict of interest that you might have with your article. You can suggest reviewers, but you can also suggest opposed reviewers, people that you don't want to review your article because they are competitors or because any other reason. Of course, you cannot come up with a list of 50 people because editors will be suspicious that no one can really read the paper. Why is this? So, well, reviewers. Reviewers, you can get reviewer names inspired by the articles you read, so people experts in your fields. Try to be mindful when choosing them and look for those that can be, let's say, harsh, that can really be critical to your work and add something to it. Of course, it will be a little bit more painful for you because they will be critical for sure, but your work eventually will be far better. So my advice is that you select reviewers, high-quality reviewers to propose to review your work. They need to come from different areas. They cannot be your colleague in the lab, of course. They cannot be former collaborators. If you have been doing some research with someone 3,000 kilometers away from your house and you have published an article together, please don't include that person because the editors will find out. So try to look for critical people that can enrich your article. This is basically the idea. And well, in the guide for authors, you will get information on how many reviewers you need to indicate and do it. It's very helpful for the editors. Finding good reviewers is very difficult, and approach this from an egoistic point of view. If finding reviewers is a time-consuming process, if you don't propose them, in most of the cases, your paper, the handling of your paper will be delayed. So it will have an impact on the time, the processing time of your article. So there's a lot of reasons to select good reviewers. So well, try to do all the best you can to make your article successful. So write it in a proper manner, follow these guidelines, and then if you think that you are ready, just send your article. Again, you send your article, and 1 out of 300 cases, as an average, for some journals it never happened. If you think of Science, Cell, Nature, will never get your article accepted at the first time. So if you have your article accepted at the first trial, really congratulations, because this is not common. So celebrate it, and you can start thinking on your next step in your research. But in most of the cases, your article will be rejected, and this happens 40 to 90% on average of the cases. So be prepared, be mentally prepared, because again, you have done your research, you are tired, you have written the article, you are even more tired, and then you get the rejection. And this is really despairing. So take it easy, take a deep breath, and then check if the comments you are getting are good or not, if what reviewers are, the opinion of reviewers is consistent, is solid, and they are actually right. Consider on how to improve your article and how to change it in such a way that will be successful in some other journals. if you take this into account, maybe you go more to the green optimistic state of mind than to the previous one. Again, we come back to some sort of first slide, and now you are here. So please take into consideration the comments from the reviewers, add them to your article. If you disagree with the comments from the editors, you have the right to do so, and the reviewers, but you really need to use solid arguments as to do it. So be free. You don't have to accept all the comments. You can be critical to them as well. We are all part of the scientific community, and you have the same right as they do. But you really need to have strong arguments and solid bases and groundings as to really give a proper rebuttal to them. So you will start basically from here onwards. Your article will go back to the editor. Depending on how you have addressed these questions, the editor can decide, okay, this is good enough as to be accepted. He can send it back to reviewers in order to get more comments from them, and so on, so forward. You can get your article accepted, you can get your article rejected, but you can also get an advice on your article, and this advice can be a major or minor revision decision. In major revisions, you will have to change important things of your article according to the comments from the reviewers and from the editors. In the minor revision, you are almost there, but being almost there doesn't mean being there. So even if you get a minor revision decision, take it really seriously, because you can still be rejected at this point. So again, you need to explore the comments from the reviewers, you really need to address their questions, and you need to think, okay, this really is making my article better for the scientific community. So in principle, answer completely, answer politely, and answer with evidence. So this is basically all what I have been doing. And as a tip, I would say that I would copy all the comments from the reviewers, and I will be addressing them one by one. It's not, I wouldn't say, even if you do it, but you get 5 comments from the reviewers, and you cannot say, I have addressed all these 5 comments. No, go one by one saying, yes, I have addressed this, and this is the way I have been doing it, or I disagree with this, and these are the reasons why I'm doing it. But please give thorough explanations to the reviewers, because they will be pleased to see that you have been paying attention to their comments. They have spent hours just revising your article, so it's also honest to them to take this approach. Well, you need to write a response letters. It's some sort of similar to the cover letter, but then you need to provide the answers, and this is all what I have been talking about now. And again, do not strike back at reviewers or editors. They are not these enemies. They are not the guy with the saw or the death in the first slide. They are trying to make scientific content better in general for the whole community, but if you think from a romantic point of view, even for humanity. So take this into account. So this is the sentence. Why run the risk of avoidable rejection by not taking revision seriously? You are almost there. You are basically getting your article accepted. So this is the last step. Let's do it as proper as we can. Well, this I have already mentioned, some tips for responding and revising. And the first sentence is really important. Take a deep breath, because, I mean, sometimes you are pissed off because you disagree with things and you are tired, and again, we don't like our work to be criticized, but you are almost there, so take it easy and try to be good when doing this. And well, some more tips. And don't doubt that editors are looking forward to accept your articles. They want content in their journals, but they want good content. So they will accept your article if this is the case. So I think that with this I will finish. What is this? Sorry. I don't know if I mentioned the guide for authors, but it is very important. And I like to finish all with this, and it has to do with the guide for authors, with an M&M ball. M&Ms. Why M&Ms here? Some of you probably know this rock band from the 80s, Van Halen. They had a hit called Jump, very popular in the 80s. These people, when they were designing their contract, in their contract somewhere, they were using a small sentence, a small paragraph, saying that they wanted to have a ball with M&Ms in their dressing room. And actually, they wanted to have all the M&Ms there, but not the brown ones. All the colors, but not brown ones. And you could think, okay, they have big egos, this, this artists always thinking in their own stuff, why are they wanting this? Actually, this was not a capriccio. This was something, this was a tool they were using to check that people were reading their contracts. If they get to the dressing room and they don't see M&Ms, basically people didn't read the contract. If they find M&Ms but brown color is represented, they read it not properly. And if you didn't find this, can I be sure that security measurements in my concerts are going to be okay, that access points are going to be okay? So they were using this specific paragraph as a proof of reading, and basically this is the guide for authors. Editors are proud of the journals. They want them to be really personal. They want to have their own style. So for them, the guide for authors is like the M&Ms. They want to be sure that you care for their journal and that you are respecting it and that you really want to publish there. And if you want to do so, you really need to be strict when following the guidelines that they are providing in their journals. So now with this, I really finished, and I will be more than happy to take any of your questions, comments, or open a debate here about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for all these problems. Questions?
Well, thank you very much, Pablo, for this quite interesting seminar, which is, from my point of view, directed mainly to the young scientists. And I would like to thank also to the attendants online, because there is a great number of people attending this meeting. So we are very happy for that. Yes, I have some comments, but I will start by the first one. Is something that happened to me quite recently when acting as a reviewer for a manuscript. I saw a manuscript and I found very serious errors in this manuscript, and of course my recommendation was to reject this paper. Not in this case, but in a previous one, I saw this situation in which various serious errors found in a manuscript does not mean that the paper is rejected. The decision was to accept this paper. So what's your recommendation? What should I do when I found that?
Thanks. Actually, as a reviewer, you don't have too many options. The only thing you can do is to provide your comments to the editor that will be making the final decision. If you really see big errors, you need to be really, not aggressive, but passionate about emphasizing why this shouldn't be published. I don't know if in these articles you would have seen some room for good quality by doing different experiments or by changing, but the only thing you can do as a reviewer is to provide your recommendation and your opinion to the editor, and he or she is supposed to be the person, the expert in the field, as to address these points. But of course, reviewing is some sort of human condition, and it's personal, and there are different opinions, and it's not the first case, and might be surprising to you, but sometimes one reviewer say accept immediately, the second reviewer say reject immediately, which will bring the editor to the point to invite 3 more reviewers trying to make something up out of it, because it can be really difficult. So actually you are a bit handcuffed. So you can be strong giving your opinion, but the editor will have the final decision, actually, yes. And in some journals, it depends on the structure of the journal. In some journals, it's a very simple structure, so there is an editor-in-chief and then the reviewers, and that's it. But there are journals which are bigger with a more complex structure, so there is an editor-in-chief and then different editors covering different topics. And sometimes, depending on how the editor-in-chief is, he wants to go through all the papers accepted. So in some instances, the specific editors can make the decision themselves, but in some cases, it's the editor-in-chief who will be making the final recommendation. In your case, if you have been in discussion with one of these topic editors, you might want to directly write to the editor-in-chief and try to convince him why. But you are getting into gray, obscure areas, so it can be tricky also how you handle. It depends on how you handle communication. Politeness is very important in all this process, I would say.
There is one question here. Miguel Daniel Mozo is asking, why is publishing so expensive and where does this money go? Do editors, reviewers get paid, and if so, do they get paid enough in your opinion?
Okay. About money, I cannot really provide an answer because it's not the topic of this talk, and of course the money is going to the publishers, I guess. I don't think it's going anywhere else. Publishing is expensive. I have been a scientist myself. I had my view, and my view on publishing or publishers could be the same as we have on pharma companies, some sort of. But publishing, if you think that 40 to 90% of the articles are rejected, this means that only 10% or 60% are published, but all of them, or most of them, have been reviewed, meaning that there is a system in place that needs to be covered. There is people working on that just to review articles that won't be published ever. So, or will be published in later stages, but not at that moment. So they won't generate revenue. So this is something to take into account. Reviewers are not paid, and this is one of the reasons why they are not paid. There is a big debate about how to pay reviewers. We can also think of the quality of the reviewers, because sometimes one reviewer just provides a paragraph, and the second reviewer is providing a full comprehensive review. So there, it would be needed to establish some guidelines as to do it. Some reviewers, they are not paid, but depending on the journal, might get discounts to publish in those journals. And unfortunately, we are living in a world that is not, as we know, the best. But being a reviewer, if you come from Iran, for instance, and you want to do your postdoc in the States, having been a review for a Western journal will be helpful. Again, it's not the best situation, but it happens. So I wouldn't like to enter the money part, because it's a debate, and we could be talking about this for ages. And actually, I would be happy to further discuss with this person if he wants to join us here. But it's more like a debate. In my opinion, it doesn't really, it's not that important here, and it's actually very personal. So,
More questions? I will ask you something about, I know that it's not the topic of this talk, but about being a reviewer. Sometimes it happens that the reviewer is just advising that you include a lot of references which are coming from the same person. So if there are some ethical guidelines also on how to do it in the proper way. And in case it happens, how to answer to this reviewer, or to say the editor, this is happening, which is not well done.
well, this question is very interesting, and actually my answer will be always scale it up. You know, so reviewers can suggest this, and if you perceive this, then you need to let the editor know, hey, this reviewer is asking me to include this and this and these references, and surprisingly enough, all these references comes from the same authors. So you might start thinking, who is the reviewer indicating this? So you should indicate this to the editor. But there are some cases where actually editors are asking to include some references as well, where they are authors. Then at a certain point, you would like to let the publisher know. The publisher doesn't have any say or any word in the scientific content of the journal, but is the person that decides how he wants to develop that journal. And it gives a very poor impression for a journal that is only getting citations from its own journal. So if the reviewer is asking you to include references and you disagree, you should tell the editor. If the editor is asking you, please go to the publisher. Publishers, I was a publisher myself, publishers love their journals, and they want them to be healthy and not to be corrupted somehow. So, and again, be mindful, because sometimes someone is indicating you should include these two references, and they might be meaningful. So in this case, you really have to judge yourself how to tackle this. But this would be my piece of advice. Yeah.
More questions?
I would like to know your opinion about this. Is the perhaps I would call it social pressure on certain topics, and we have witnessed a clear example on that with the COVID-19. So at the beginning of 2020, we saw many papers about genome of different strains of the virus and so on and so on. And with this social pressure on publishing, many of those papers lately has been retrieved. What's your opinion about this factor on journals? I don't know. I have explained.
I think that for the specific case of COVID, I think this is a very strange situation, very weird, and actually the amount of retractions related to COVID published papers is going to be amazing. I mean, journals like Cell have accepted articles after 2 or 3 weeks. And as an anecdote, I will let you know that I attended one talk from one scientist one day. He was presenting a specific work, and he put the picture of his postdoc that did the job, and she was pregnant. And then she placed another picture of this girl holding a baby that might be 1 year old, and this was the moment when the paper was accepted, meaning that this paper, to get published in this journal, took more than 1 year, over 18 months. And now they are accepting papers in 2 weeks, in a 2-week time frame. Of course, there will be a lot of retractions, but again, I think that the problem here is that we were all stressed out, we were all very scared, and that I think that I wouldn't use this as an example, because I think that all the world related to this, from publishers to scientists to institutions to funding agencies that are putting a lot of money in COVID research and so on, at a certain point they will have some complaints on what they have been doing, or they will be critical to themselves, because the situation, I mean, I think that there were some lines broken there and crossed that shouldn't have been. Having said this, again, we are living in a world with limited resources, and it doesn't really represent my way of thinking, but people are utilitarists. So we want our money in a place that will bring us more money. And this has to do with the topics and the hot topics. And unfortunately, it's not the same working in research than on archaeology, unless you are doing the most of archaeology in the best Egyptian tomb or whatever. So I think that it's wise, if you want to get funding, to stick some sort of to your field of research, but look or explore areas that will be trendy or hot topics in the future. And there's a lot of analytical tools out there that will let you know what's going to be trendy in the next coming years. When I started doing research, it was all more simple. You know, there were no so many data. You were focusing on your research, doing your specific experiments and so on. Now, scientists, I think that the workloads are far bigger, and I think that you really need to have a far better strategic thinking when approaching your research, if you want to get funds, and if you want to get citations, and if you want your article to be published in a, or your research to be published in a high standard, higher ranking journal. So I think it's a little bit unfortunate, but it is how it is.
Any other comment? Well, if this is not the case, we thank you again for coming, and we have small presents for you.
Thank you very much.